Every reserve currency in modern history has lasted about 75 to 100 years.
Right.
And the U.S. dollar officially took that crown at the Bretton Woods Conference in 1944. So I just want you to do that math in your head. 1944 plus 80 years puts us, well, exactly in the present moment.
Right. On schedule.
Yeah, the clock is ticking.
Right.
But, when you hit an 80-year expiration date on a global currency, are we looking at legitimate mathematical pattern recognition here, or is this just like financial doomerism?
I mean, it's a fair question.
Welcome to this deep dive, everyone. Today we are unpacking Ray Dalio's big cycle framework. We've got a massive stack of historical data and global debt reports here, and our mission is really to figure out what these massive historical trends actually mean for you.
Exactly.
Like, what does this mean for your career, your savings, and your assets over the next decade?
Yeah.
Because I wrestle with this right out of the gate. Is this 80-year expiration date just panic?
Well, it's entirely rational to look at that 80-year timeline and, feel a little unease.
Yeah, definitely.
But most of the macro commentary out there right now, it just feeds on that unease. It's either like apocalyptic doom on one side or blind cheerleading on the other.
Right.
The reality in the data is much more boring, but honestly far more useful. We are simply in a recognizable historical pattern. It happened to the Dutch, it happened to the British, and it's happening now.
So it's mechanics, not prophecies.
Exactly. It's happened before, and you can absolutely position yourself for it without panic. But to understand that 75-year lifespan of a currency, we first have to understand the mechanical engine driving it.
Which is debt.
Right, debt. Dalio breaks this engine down into two gears. First, you have the short-term debt cycle.
Okay, let's unpack this. The short-term cycle, that's like what, the standard business cycle?
Yeah, lasting about 6 years, give or take 3. It's that familiar rhythm we all know. The central bank lowers interest rates to boost borrowing, right?
Which gives us an economic high.
Exactly. But then that causes inflation. So they hike rates, credit tightens, we get a slowdown, a recession, and a reset.
And the sources say since 1945, there have been 12 of these complete short-term cycles.
Yeah.
And we are basically 2/3 of the way through the 13th right now.
Right. But the real issue is the long-term debt cycle, or the big debt cycle. This one lasts about 80 years.
Because human nature loves a stimulant.
Exactly. We love a stimulant.
Yes.
Politically, it is so much easier to borrow and spend than it is to endure a painful recession. So central banks never let a short-term cycle fully reset all the bad debt.
They intervene.
Yeah, they intervene earlier. They cut rates a little lower each time, which means every short-term cycle ends with slightly more debt than the one before it. Over decades, that debt just grows like a cancer.
It vastly outpaces actual income growth. It's like building up a massive cap earn tolerance.
I like that analogy.
Right. The short-term cycle is like drinking a cup of coffee for a quick boost.
Okay.
But the long-term cycle is doing that every day for years, building up this massive tolerance until your entire adrenal system is totally exhausted.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, that adrenal exhaustion is what happens when central banks literally hit a wall.
They get trapped.
Totally trapped. The debt burden gets so unsustainable that they can't satisfy both sides. You have the lender creditors who want high interest rates to protect their capital from inflation.
Right.
And on the other side, you have the borrower debtors who are so buried in debt they need low interest rates just to survive.
So the central bank can't win. At any rate, high enough to help the creditors crushes the debtors, and vice versa.
Right. Which inevitably forces a deleveraging. The debt has to be reduced, sometimes through defaults, but most commonly they just print money and devalue the currency.
Which is wild.
Yeah.
And this financial exhaustion, it doesn't just happen in a vacuum. It maps perfectly onto the geopolitical rise and fall of nations.
It does. It dictates how empires are built and lost.
Yeah, Dalio has this empirical sequence of 8 determinants, like a mechanical domino effect. It starts with education, right?
Yes, education is always first. A highly educated society leads to the second determinant, which is innovation and technology.
And that tech boom boosts competitiveness.
Exactly, which is the third. You start making better stuff than everyone else. That naturally leads to the fourth step, capturing a massive share of world trade.
You become the global factory.
But, when you have all those trade routes, you have to protect them. So the fifth step is building unparalleled military strength.
Or protect the money.
Right. And that combination, trade plus military, generates huge economic output, the sixth step. All that capital needs a home, so you build a leading financial center.
Which is number 7. like Amsterdam or London or New York.
Exactly. And finally, because everyone is trading with you and using your financial center, your currency naturally becomes the reserve currency. That's the eighth step.
But the crucial insight here is that reserve currency status is a lagging indicator.
It is the absolute last thing to go.
It's like a common global language, right?
Yeah.
It just sticks around out of pure habit long after the empire has actually started to decline.
Yeah, the rot happens decades before the currency fails. You can trace this exact baton pass through history. The Dutch dominated the 1500s, the British in the 1800s, and then the U.S. rose to its peak around World War II.
And the decline of the British pound is like the perfect recent case study.
Oh, absolutely.
You had the 1949 devaluation,
Oh.
then the 1956 Suez Canal crisis.
Right, where the U.S. basically forced Britain to back down by threatening to dump British bonds.
Which triggered a massive sell-off. And it all culminated in 1976 when Britain had to literally get an IMF bailout.
The former master of the world begging the IMF.
Which is crazy. But, I look at this conveyor belt of history and I have to push back a little. Is it really that inevitable?
How do you mean?
Like, our country's really just trapped on this mathematical track? Does unique cultural agency or leadership matter at all?
Well, it's not a rigid track. The cycle dictates the pressure, not the response. The historian Peter Turchin actually points this out perfectly.
Oh, right, with Britain and Russia.
Yeah. In the 19th century, both Britain and Russia faced these exact same late-stage pressures. But they survived because their elite classes adapted.
They sacrificed their short-term interests to relieve the pressure.
Exactly. So the storm is guaranteed, but you get to decide how you board up the windows.
Okay, so if the pattern of decline is that clear, we have to look in the mirror. Where exactly is the U.S. on this curve right now?
According to Dalio, we are deep into what he calls stage 5.
The late cycle stage.
Yeah. The symptoms are all there. We're over-indebted, wildly inefficient, internally divided, and we're facing a rising external rival.
China.
Right. The power lines between the U.S. and China are actively converging. Historically, Dalio compares today's exact macro conditions to the periods of 1905 to 1914 and 1933 to 1938.
Wow. Not exactly the most peaceful decades.
No, not at all. And a massive driver of this stage 5 friction is something called the Triffin dilemma.
Yes, from the European Central Bank source.
Right. The Triffin dilemma is the structural flaw of being the reserve currency. You eventually have to choose between your own domestic economic needs and global stability.
Because you have to flood the world with dollars for global trade, but doing that causes inflation back home.
Exactly. You literally have to inflate your own economy to keep the world running. The late 1960s Vietnam War era is the prime example.
We printed a ton of money to finance the war and domestic programs.
Which caused massive inflation, and it forced Nixon to end the Bretton Woods gold standard in 1971.
Right, moving us from monetary policy 0 to monetary policy 1, a pure fiat system.
Yeah, which brings us to the present. The 2008 financial crisis basically hit the wall, but central banks just kicked the can down the road with massive money printing.
Quantitative easing.
Right. But following the March 2022 tightening, the era of free money is officially over. Cash went from being trash to actually being attractive.
Bubbles popped, and borrower debtors got punished. And here's where it gets really interesting to me. Look at how geopolitics are suddenly driving domestic economic policy.
More than any time since the 1930s.
Exactly. We're seeing massive onshoring, protecting supply chains. It's not just about efficiency anymore. It's about geopolitical resilience.
What's fascinating here is how this transition naturally breeds extreme domestic friction, too.
Oh, the political polarization.
Yeah. You have a period of slowing economic growth, but asset prices are artificially inflated, creating an intolerable wealth gap. This breeds political extremism and populism on both sides.
People demand radical change.
Exactly. And while it sounds incredibly apocalyptic, the data shows it is actually just a very standard stage 5 characteristic.
Which brings us to the real point of all this. Understanding the 75-year cycle, seeing the stage 5 symptoms, isn't about building a bunker in your backyard.
No, not at all.
It's about making rational adjustments to your life and your investments. We need to shift the focus away from doom and toward opportunity.
Because the sources explicitly state that debt crises provide massive investment opportunities if you understand how the new mechanics work.
I love that quote from Dalio in the sources. He says, if you're not worried, you need to worry. And if you're worried, you don't need to worry.
It's brilliant advice. Worrying protects you because it forces you to prepare.
Right. So what changes when the cycle actually turns?
The entire environment shifts. We go from an environment that heavily rewards borrower debtors to one that rewards lender creditors.
Capital gets expensive.
Exactly. People have been conditioned to just be long only in equities for the last decade, but ignoring the big cycle and just holding stocks blindly might not work for the next 10 years.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? It means recognizing that the financial gravity that worked beautifully from 2009 to 2021 has completely changed.
This raises an important question about adaptability. Dalio points out that human adaptability is literally our greatest trait.
Right.
The people who survive and thrive during these paradigm shifts are the ones who recognize the new reality and change their strategy. They don't fight the tide.
They surf it. Which brings us to our listener challenge for this deep dive. I want you to look closely at your portfolio, your savings, and your career path right now.
Be honest with yourself.
Exactly. Ask yourself, is this allocated for the next 10 years of the cycle or the last 10? Because those are two completely different things.
Entirely different.
Commit to making one real adjustment this month. It doesn't have to be massive, whether that's geographic, maybe tweaking a specific sector in your portfolio, or even just dedicating time to learn a new resilient skill.
And as you do that, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over.
Yeah, what's the wild card?
Well, historically, these transitions between world orders, they take 10 to 20 years to play out, and they're often accompanied by severe, violent, domestic, and global conflicts.
Right, the passing of the baton is never smooth.
No, it's agonizing. But today, we have something the British and the Dutch never had. We have the rapid, exponential advancement of technology and AI.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So the question is, will technology and AI actually compress this painful transition period by allowing us to innovate our way out of the debt burden? Or will it just amplify the geopolitical conflicts that are already happening?
That is a massive question to sit with. An 80-year historical cycle colliding with an exponential tech curve.
It's uncharted territory.
Well, that officially concludes our deep dive into the big cycle, and it actually wraps up our entire current series on money and economics.
It's been a ride.
It really has. But next time, we are launching a brand new series called Productivity Contrarians.
I'm so excited for this one.
Me too. We're exploring why most of the popular productivity advice you hear actually makes you less productive. And we'll get into what the absolute highest performers in the world actually do to succeed behind closed doors. You won't want to miss it. But until then, keep that 1944 math in the back of your head. Thanks for joining us.